All right, Joel, let's go ahead and get started.
All right. There's kind of a funny number of names around this area of document assembly, document generation, and essentially this area of document generation, document assembly, the need really is around how do I better automate, how do I better build documents so that I'm not spending so much time around creating headers, creating footers, pulling in legal information, pulling in different snippets of information, and really creating truly dynamic documents where I can, if especially with form letters or statement of works and proposals, there's a lot of content that's the same every single time. And the challenge I find is you pull the last one off the shelf doesn't necessarily mean that it has the updated legal information. You know, you've got other departments that may have dependencies on things. So a lot of it is what we want to do here in the agenda is basically we're going to cover the business value. I want you to understand why we're talking about this and what this is all about, because there is some real true business value out of this. And Microsoft's made a number of attempts over the years. We're going to talk about the history of document generation, of this document assembly. We're going to talk about the capabilities in Word 2016. In fact, I've got a demo for you. I want you to understand how that ties in with SharePoint and Office 365 and how to, you know, the capabilities that are there, and help you understand some of those limitations, and then help you understand, and then I'm going to hand it over to Manish, who is going to then show us all these amazing capabilities in Nintex. And it's amazing how many customers have Nintex but don't realize the power of document generation. And we're going to save time for questions at the end. But along the way, if you feel like you've got questions, feel free to use the Q&A panel of the GoToWebinar.
Yes, and I'm going to go ahead and start this all off with a poll. And why don't we all go ahead and choose any that apply here. What is your current configuration? Do you have SharePoint 2016, SharePoint 2013, 2010 or older, Office 365, or a hybrid? You can choose all that apply. And I'm going to leave this up for about another 30 seconds and let everybody answer that can.
Yeah, and with this question, I know that a lot of customers do have multiple types of deployments. It's okay to multi-check these kinds of deployments. And even with something around hybrid, we were having a conversation just yesterday about some people have multiple types. They may be having Office 365 and they may have on-prem, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they've actually configured hybrid. It's really interesting to see what people have deployed these days. A lot of people are trying to get off of 2010 because it's you know, it's expired essentially. You know, you're going to extend its support now at this point.
Well, we have about 85% that have gone ahead and voted, so I am going to, let's see, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll, and I'm going to share the results. So as it stands right now, it looks like, wow, we have, yeah, it's about what I would expect.
Do you want to just read those off for us, Bobby?
Yeah, sure. SharePoint 2016, we have 27%. 2013, we have 53%. 2010 and older, we have 28%. Office 365, 49%. And a hybrid, about 15%.
Awesome.
So I'm going to go ahead and finish this off, and go ahead, Joe.
All right, thank you. So everybody loves Clippy. I've included a couple of quick Clippy memes. And maybe everybody doesn't love Clippy, which is actually why he got cut out of the product. but at the same time, Clippy and his friends, yeah, good times.
Yeah, I was always wondering what happened to Clippy.
You know, so I saw one Clippy meme that actually said, you know you're old when you know what this guy is.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, I do know I'm old. In fact, you could probably say, you know, you're not a millennial if you remember typing documents and having this guy help you out. All right, so understanding the business value here. Automation is one of the key things here. It's basically, we're in this world of automation. You know, we're trying to create more, make more things dynamic, streamline business processes. And as well, there's these back-end business data where things often, we call them kind of locked up in line of business apps. And integration is often the key, where we're looking to pull in data from documents. And even kind of the dream of SharePoint is that there's one source of truth. Well, if you've got this one source of truth, but you can't leverage it in your documents, or that it gets stale in your documents, then you're not, then you have a limitation, right? Often it's consistency, especially from a marketing perspective. People, they create a brand and they're marching down that path. Well, then you get mergers and acquisitions. In fact, these days it seems like in large companies there's tons of M&A, as they say, the mergers and acquisitions, where you have new brands, new sites that need to be added, new URLs. There's always marketing campaigns going on where it's like, oh, we've tweaked our colors a little bit, or we've updated our logo to meet whatever change in the company, or every season we have different things going on. Imagine in retail that there's always some new promotion that's going on, and so on. So standardized, consistent, the branding aspects. From a legal perspective, there's that legal compliance. If legal says we want this disclaimer on the bottom of every proposal or on the bottom of every statement of work, or we want this legalese to protect us on every letter, let's put this at the bottom of every letterhead, and then they've got it out there for 6 months and they realize, uh-oh, we forgot this. Now there's already thousands of documents using that across the company. How do you go and rein that in? And trying to use search to track those down is not the way to do it, especially when everybody has their own copy on their machine. So it's not like you can even search anymore for those content. Everybody has their own individual process for how they create documents. So the dream here that I'm trying to paint this picture is, imagine that legal is actually, they have a place where they're maintaining that we have a place where we can keep our brand, our headers and footers, blocks of text and things like that. Wouldn't it be great if we can have dynamic content where we're focused on just the content itself? Even having placeholders where this is the customer name, and you type it in one spot and it updates throughout the document. The increased productivity and efficiency, and even streamlining it and simplifying it for users. And as well, just think about how much duplication of effort is when everybody is working on their own document process for producing whatever documents they are. And ultimately, it is so much duplication of effort today. And you're not alone if you find yourself creating your own documents, tracking down somebody else's work that they've already done and trying to use that as a template to create your new documents. But don't be surprised if the branding police come and tell you, hey, that's the old brand, or that piece of compliance information you have at the bottom of your document is outdated. And so there's a lot of wasted effort on that. So the dream really is focusing on your IP, not the layouts, not the fonts, not the headers and footers and legalese, beyond the dynamic information of pricing data or line item data that could be included in your information that could make you so much more productive. So I want to give you a quick history lesson. I don't want to spend a ton of time on this, but I do want to help you understand what's happened in the Microsoft world. And even if we step up before this, I was actually listening to an NPR thing yesterday that was talking about the history of the internet, and was talking about it was a conversation with Tim Berners-Lee, one of the guys who for the World Wide Web, right? They were talking about what happened with Gopher, where University of Minnesota basically tried to say, hey, we're creating a standard and we may charge for Gopher, but Tim Berners-Lee and CERN basically put out, we're not going to charge for it, and we had this major shift of file sharing and how we share documents, which is kind of what we're talking about, the history of things. In 1993, CERN basically said, we are going to provide the World Wide Web consistently free, and we're going to basically provide, basically putting it out there that we're never going to make this a paid thing. And that was huge in terms of file sharing. When you talk about history, 1993, it was only a few years later that Word, obviously we weren't, Word 1.0 wasn't that much different in 1993, 1994. We have Office Assistant who comes to help us in building our documents, and hey, I recognize you're writing a letter, these kinds of things, tap, tap, tap. You could change it to the wizard or the little dog. Office Assistant helps us basically, hey, maybe you should use a template, so it basically encouraged us as we were working along to use reusable parts, whatever they might be, or kind of giving us assistance along the way. Now, that .doc was huge. That was Word documents. There was WordPerfect and then Word, and Word kind of took over. In fact, there was this massive concern over monopoly of Microsoft. You may have remembered some of those hearings in 2000 or thereabouts. In fact, I think it was even 1998. Anyway, yeah, some history for you. But one of the things Microsoft did was people were starting to stick viruses in the documents. They were these binary-based documents, and if you're going to try and do any kind of document assembly, you were doing it through OLEDB or the DDE, and they basically had this with the newer file type, which came out a little bit later. There was a document conversion and compatibility pack that allowed you, with your older versions of Word, to open up the newer doc types. And from a component perspective, in 2003, we had the COM object model for working with your spreadsheets and charts in terms of if you're going to do any development against file types. But what really started to change things was when Microsoft in 2007 went with the OpenXML file format. And XML being part of, you could basically crack open your docx file and find that it was actually made up of multiple files itself. And that was huge in terms of composite parts, creating relationships, being able to start copying and pasting not only pictures, but actually including things like spreadsheets or Visio diagrams that could then be edited back in those original products. That was pretty huge in terms of creating these relationships between parts and being able to, before it's like if you paste it in a table or something, it would be stuck. It would basically come in as an image instead of being able to be something you could edit. And Microsoft, from a SharePoint perspective, they did a bunch with this kind of word automation service. And taking advantage of OpenXML, we had a number of innovations with things like document templates, content types, the extensible ribbon inside of SharePoint, as well as inside of Word, basically at different times. SharePoint got it a little bit later than Word, but we ended up getting this capability of being able to have an extensible ribbon where people could put buttons in there that could do different things to the documents themselves. And that was pretty huge. And as things improved, we even ended up with a second version of that OpenXML with an SDK. So developers could actually write against the Open SDK for being able to work with documents itself. So extensibility really, really, really opened up in a huge way with SharePoint 2010 and Office 2010. And the big innovation in 2013, the focus was on cross-browser, cross-platform, the mobile Office. They dusted off the Mac versions, and we got a lot of convergence there. But being able to much more easily move objects around, but as well, that idea of being able to do a search on the web and say, without having to go to the web and find images, right inside of Word, inside of PowerPoint, we could search, and it would pull back Creative Commons images, so we could actually reuse images inside of our things. And it would hook up to Bing and Flickr, and in terms of being able to pull in those rich resources off the web. So in terms of building our documents, much more streamlined and much more extensible from that perspective. And even that idea of recent documents being able to follow us across the multiple devices we use. And mobile Office, right? We have Office on Android, on iOS, on our iPads, our iPad Pros, on our Kindles and things like that. And I know it's still not all of Office is on Kindle, but that's not a huge thing. But OneNote's there. So we do have parts of Office that we can use. And there's the browser-based version of Office for that matter. So all sorts of interesting things. We even got ribbons in even the browser-based versions. And the ribbon itself has taken different forms as well. In 2016, we have even more extensibility with the OOXML, Word add-ins. There's a JavaScript API snippet explorer. I'm going to focus on what's new inside of Word in just a second and jump in there. But before I do, I want you to understand, kind of step back from this world a little bit. Sometimes we stick our head so much into features and functionality that we don't realize what's actually changing in the world around us. And so I kind of just took a few images just to step back again a minute from this world. We get so close to it. We think about what's happening in that Tesla factory as an example. You know, what does a factory worker look like these days? This is just, you know, the automation of creating a car as an example is it just blows my mind. If document generation was as simple as building a car, you know, that kind of idea. You see these images here? 3-story apartment building, looks like a normal building. It was printed. I don't know if you guys have seen those videos of the printing of buildings. That's no longer just a prototype and some kind of somebody's idea. That's now happening inside of China. It's pretty wild what you can do now, just from the idea of taking an AutoCAD, taking something that was virtual and turning it into something physical. That idea is you know, the 3D printing concepts, pretty crazy stuff. Now think as well, when you order something on Amazon, and obviously I don't care what service you're talking about, but the idea that you order something online, and these days within hours even, you can have that thing on your doorstep. How does that happen? Well, that's automation. You know, basically, you've got these little robots that are cruising around. They know where these things are, and they'll basically bring the entire shelf to the person who can then assemble the package if they don't do it themselves. You know, they'll stick it on a conveyor belt that'll shoot it across the massive factory floors. Pretty wild. Those massive warehouses. So going back to our reality of, hey, we're talking about Word here. Well, I want to just tell you, there's a ton of really interesting things that have happened in Word, and I don't feel like Word has been given any kind of attention with this last wave. It seems like when I started searching for document assembly and these types of things with Word, I realized not a lot of people, there's not a lot of buzz here, but I did my own searching and some of my own testing and trying to build some of my own templates and realized, wow, there's a ton of stuff that Microsoft stuck in here. And so what I want to do is I want to jump out rather than just talking about these features. Basically, there's all sorts of galleries now inside of Word. So I'm going to just stop displaying this for a second. Open up Word here. And we'll start off with Santa's letter. And you guys can see my screen. Now check this out. So here we have a simple little letter to Santa, or from the desk of Santa Claus. Now you may notice this is not a customized version of Word. I'm looking just at Word, and if I go to the Insert tab, almost all of the automation I'm going to be looking for in this demo are right here. The first thing we do is notice that we've got something here called Cover Page. If I hit Cover Page, you can see I've got all sorts of interesting cover pages that I could insert here. None of which I want for my Santa Claus letter, but there's some ideas in here of what I could do for my Santa Claus letterhead. And you can see I can get more cover pages from office.com if I wanted to do some more searching, or if I've got a cover page, I can remove it. Well, as an example, let's say that this was the cover page I wanted to create for the next time I do a letter to Santa Claus. I click cover page after selecting everything, and I click Save Selection to Cover Page Gallery. Okay, and now I can say this is the Santa Claus cover page. And notice it's saving to a place called Building Blocks in a gallery called Cover Pages. So there's a couple of interesting things here that are happening. I'm basically creating content, stuffing it in little galleries in different places. So now it's saved there in this gallery. And if I now want to create a cover page, I have the ability, I have my own little Santa Claus cover page here in my gallery. So now next time I do one, you'll notice I've got my little Santa Claus cover page. Pretty cool, huh? Next thing we want to do is we want to say, oh, well, what else can we do with this document? Well, maybe we want to have a consistent header and footer. So as an example, we could actually, let's go here. We have over here this little area called header. And as an example, we have a bunch of different headers here. Let's just, for kicks, let's pick one of these headers off of here. Let's get this banded one. And let's just customize this really briefly. All right, and let's pick a style here. And obviously, there's a bunch more stuff we could do in here. But notice what's interesting about the ribbon is it is contextual. So as an example, while I'm on here, you can see I've got something called quick parts. What are quick parts? Quick parts are inserted pre-formatted text, auto text, document properties, fields, anywhere in the document. To reuse content in your document, select it and save it to the quick parts gallery. So as we're working in a document, we can actually save things and push things into this quick parts gallery, just like we saved those headers and footers, or just like we have headers and footers. We also have something that we can actually stick into a gallery into these quick parts. If we want to include a page number on the top of the page with different styles, as an example, we can stuff these things in here. And as we move along, we can make different changes, right? We can add different parts and pieces. Now I want to go back to this. There's with each of these little things, we can save it. So here we are in the header. All I have to do is block my header, and now I can save my header to the header gallery, just like we were doing. From the desk of Santa, header. Now it's saved as in the building blocks as insertable content. Now I've got a header that I can use for different times. Now let me go into this. So all we have to do is kind of click out of it. Now we're actually inside of the letter itself. This is just simple text. But couldn't it be more exciting, right? Let's go back to here. Those little quick parts are now, they're still there, they're just hidden. And that's a really, really important area when you're talking about dynamic documents. We have something called auto text, where I can save auto text. So if there's something I'm typing a lot, I can, all I have to do is block it and save it to my gallery. Same kind of deal, right? I have properties. We'll come back to that in a second. We were wondering, well, where did all those building blocks come from? Well, there's something called the building blocks organizer, and all of those things like bibliographies, here's our cover page, a whole section of cover pages, everything we have built in from the product team, but also different parts and pieces are here. They're all saved in the building blocks. So as an example, we want a grid sidebar. It's a built-in text box. So we can save, if we build something really cool that we want to include in our document, all we have to do is save it in our building block organizer. Anybody know these things existed? They've done a lot of work to then have people not even realize all these powerful things are inside of Word. Now, I don't have a ton more time here, but I do want to show you one last fantastic little thing. Here we have a thing called Tap. Now, this is actually only available with Office 365 subscription of Office. If we click Document Item, we have something called Tap. And this Tap, look at this, Search, OneDrive, and SharePoint. This is going to blow your mind, right? We have integration of our Office 365 inside of Word itself. Okay, use personalized search to find documents and reuse them, parts of them, inside of your document. I can actually search across Office 365. Probably not the best thing to be looking for, but here we have a non-disclosure agreement snippet of text. Now, obviously, Santa needs to include his NDA. So let's include his little NDA by just simply clicking the plus here. I must be in an area that I'm not supposed to be in the document. Anyway, the idea is we can actually include different snippets inside of our document. So if there's reusable parts and pieces from documents we're searching for, including images and pictures, you know, here's as an example, we want to include this little picture that we were using in a bunch of different documents. You can pull stuff out of your PowerPoints. You know, let's say you're doing your design document, you keep doing the same piece of design, you can actually save that as a part, like a quick part, but as well, that document, you can retrieve it very simply by just doing a simple SharePoint search. You know, it's like, oh, well, I want to get the architecture. Well, let's pull that architecture out of here and then pull it in. So we're getting documents back, and then we're getting the parts and pieces that it thinks are things we want to be able to reuse. And with that, let me jump back into, well, there's actually one last thing I want to show you. People are all about dynamic. We're talking about dynamic documents. If we want to make this a form letter, we can use this little thing right here. So it's like, if this is the company address as an example, we just type that in there, and now we just say this is a document property, and it's the company address. Now we put it in there once, and anytime we want to, use it, it's reused throughout the document. And as well, we can actually wire these up to our template inside of Office 365. And basically, what we want to do is we want to wire those up in our document templates. Basically, from an Office 365 perspective, every library has a template. Often they're not used, but we can leverage those document templates, and we can even wire up those properties into our documents. So we can actually leverage those things All we do is when you're in that advanced settings inside of SharePoint or Office 365, we click Edit Template, and we can edit those template. And we want to basically reuse those parts and pieces in our content types. We can basically set each content type can have its own document template, and they can even have so you can have multiple document templates, and they don't have to be documents. They could be Excel or PowerPoint and so on that have different forms and so on. And I don't have a ton of time to dig into this piece of it, but basically this is where all those cool features we saw in Word start to find their way inside of. We're going to create a really, really powerful document and then be able to leverage and share it through SharePoint.
Now, all this seemed really nice and easy, but something you got to be really careful about. This is the gotcha slide, and then I'm going to hand things over to Manish. But you got to worry about what's happening on your desktop. So basically, you could be creating your own little silo on your desktop. You do all these really powerful things. You need to share the wealth. You need to train others. You need to share your templates. Don't create desktop silos. Don't create departmental silos. You may have your experts in your company who can help wire these up. Leverage the managed metadata service. Leverage managed properties for search refinement. Leverage content types. You can get multiple different types. But ultimately, it comes down to governance. It comes down to delegation and control. But there's some really powerful things in here. But this is really just building blocks, and Manish can really show you what Nintex has done with some of this this concept of document generation.
Thanks, Joel. That was great. Thanks again, Joel, for that great overview of the capabilities in Word and SharePoint. And now we can look into the Nintex Document Generation solution. But before I dive into that, I would like to give a quick, brief introduction of Nintex and what we do. For those of the folks on the call who are not aware of Nintex. So Nintex, simply put, transforms the business processes into automated workflows. So we are all about making companies and employees more efficient, more productive with their day-to-day work and processes. Why is that important, you may ask? Gone are the days when people used to be given a task and they are doing it either by their own or in isolation from other departments. Today, our work spans working not only with internal colleagues, but externally with customers, partners, vendors, spread across different offices and different time zones. At the same time, we are working with different teams and processes and business functions, ranging from sales, customer service, field operations, marketing, and what have you. And on top of that, the content and the information that we need to work with has exploded with the availability of data in multiple sources and different business systems. And so what Nintex is helping companies do is bringing these three things together. So letting you work with the people that are important for your job in whatever process it might be with your information regardless of where it sits. And so it's bringing all of these together in an elegant way. And the way we do it is through our workflow and content automation platform. And this is an end-to-end solution spanning from our workflow and forms products that let you automate the most simple, ranging to the most complicated business processes, our mobility solutions that let you design custom apps so that you can take your work on the go. Of course, our document generation solution for creating dynamic, rich, data-driven documents, and also a analytics solution, Nintex Hawkeye, that gives you a process view into all of your business processes. And not only that, it also tells you the ROI of those processes. But today, let's dive into document generation. So the demo scenario that I'm going to be running through today is onboarding a new team member. Now we all know how important it is to get the right people for the job, how difficult it is to really find and recruit such people. And when we have landed on that perfect candidate and they have accepted the role, we want to make them feel valuable, we want to make them feel welcome and set them up for success by giving them all of the resources they need. And so the scenario is either an HR team member or the hiring manager starting the onboarding process for this new hire. And this demo is sort of a short component of the overall hiring process where the new employee will need to be set up with their equipment, their credentials to the various business systems, their training. But in this scenario, we are going to be generating a welcome packet for the new employee, arming them with all of the information and making them feel welcome. So let's go ahead and get started. We will enter in the employee name, the manager's name, and we'll do a couple of these. We'll have one employee starting in the Melbourne office, joining the finance team, and submitting a credit card application for them. And then let's do another one. And in this case, let's have them joining the Seattle office, the product management team, and no credit card application for this particular employee. So you can notice that the workflow has kicked off in the background and it is in progress. So we'll come back to this and let's jump into the document generation action. So what you see here on my screen is the Nintex Workflow Designer Canvas. This is on Nintex Workflow for SharePoint 2016. And in order to bring up the document generation action, you simply search for it and you drag and drop it into your designer canvas. And there you go. Of course, today we are not going to build out an entire workflow. That would take a little bit more time than we have. And so we have this new employee onboarding workflow process. In here, we have our document generation action. So let's go ahead and dive deeper into that. Now, the document generation configuration consists of three key parts. We have setting up which document templates we want to include in the final document, what sort of table data we want to include, and what images we want in the final document as well. So let's start off with the document template section. Now, the first thing to specify is what do you want the output file to be. We have three choices here. We can output the final document as a single PDF file, we can do separate PDF files, or we can choose to keep the original file type as the template document. In each of these scenarios, there is an option to include multiple templates depending upon the output file type you have selected. In this particular example, as you can see, for our welcome packet for the new employee, we have input a number of templates. And these templates are further customizable in the sense that we can choose whether to merge these templates with a prior template, what sort of a merge type do we need. And the really cool thing is this conditional logic ability. And you can specify which templates to include based on certain conditions. In this example, this is a credit card application template. And what we are saying is you include this template based on the condition that there is a credit card application submitted for the new team member. And so when if the value is yes, only then will that credit card application be submitted. We can add other document templates, and we can easily select them from within the SharePoint sites. So wherever those documents live in your SharePoint environment, you can pick those up. We can choose to name what the output file is, and more importantly, where to post it. So in this case, we are posting it in a documents library, but you can also publish it to a URL or attach to current list items. And that is essentially setting up the document templates for our action. Now let's switch over to table data. What this allows us to do is to query the various site collections and to input that information in nicely formatted tables that appear in the final document. So let's look at this example. Here we have a table called social events. We are formatting it in a row type, and we are querying the various collection within SharePoint, and we are pulling in the relevant information for this table. In this case, we are pulling in the event date, the event title, and the event location. And these will be formatted into a table that will be present in the final document. The third thing that we want to input in the final document are images. And we can add any number of images, and these could be a URL that is either within the SharePoint environment or an external URL. We can also input the images as a workflow variable behind which are the URLs to those specific photos. Now, the last thing I want to show in this setting up of the document generation action is the Nintex Document Tagger action. What this allows us to do is to get dynamic data from the workflow variables into our final document. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that even though the data is being pulled from SharePoint, you are not restricted to data within SharePoint. With Nintex Workflow for SharePoint and Office 365, you can get data from a variety of other sources and cloud services like Salesforce, Microsoft Dynamics CRM, Box, Dropbox, and these all can be pulled into the Nintex Workflow and the SharePoint environment through connectors, and they can be surfaced in the documents that you are generating as part of the document generation action. So here we have our welcome packet, the template for the welcome packet, and this has a variety of information. Now, some of the information here is standard, regardless of which team or which office location the team member is joining. So in this case, it's describing a little bit about the company, the products, why is it a great place to work, who our customers are. But then we get to information that is really specific to the particular individual. So for example, what team are they joining, and who are their teammates. So let's look at an example of how we would dynamically input this information with the tagger. In this case, we would go over to item properties, select the team name, and there, it's inserted into the document. Similarly, these are placeholders for the images for the various team members. And what this allows us to do is take the various image URLs that are within our SharePoint library, and this will surface the photo for the appropriate team member in this placeholder image. Same applies for the team member name and their description. Great. So now let's look and see where we are with our generated documents. And there we see Jane Miller and John Smith. So we have our two new welcome packets for our employees. So let's go ahead and look at these one by one. So this is the final welcome packet that Jane will receive. It's customized for Jane. It's welcoming her to the Melbourne office, the information about the company products. And this is where things get interesting. So Jane is joining the finance team. These are her team members. So she can easily look at who her teammates are, what's the different roles and responsibilities. This is the social calendar that was pulled up from the table data. So Jane can see what events she can participate in. Some more specific information to the office location, the city, and customized vouchers for Jane to use. And if I remember correctly, we put in a credit card application for Jane, and here is the credit card application. So Jane can get started on that application right away, as it is included as part of our welcome packet. And now let us look at the other welcome packet that we had for John and really contrast it with the one that we prepared for Jane. So as you will notice, this is customized to John, welcoming John to the Seattle office, information that is specific to John in terms of his team and teammates, the office location, again, the customized vouchers. And since John does not need a credit card for his job, there is no credit card application to this welcome packet. So John is seeing only the information that is most relevant and specific to him. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the document generation action in Nintex Workflow for SharePoint and Office 365. So before I move on, I would quickly like to take a short poll. And based on the information that we just saw and the demo that we just saw, I would love to get an idea of how people think they have either used or could be using a document generation or assembly solution for scenarios such as sales or support, working with your legal team, the finance team, the field inspection services. Again, really, these are just some examples of where we need information and data from different sources. And as Joel mentioned, still make sure they adhere to our branding requirements, the legal terms and conditions, and what have you.
Yes, please go ahead and vote this. We'll wait for about 30 seconds before we close the poll, and then we'll share the results. So far, only about 35% of you have voted. Please go ahead and vote, please.
No surprise, legal is the top winner here. As we say, we all like to abide by what the legal teams have prescribed to us.
Okay, we've got a little over half that have. So let's go ahead and close the poll and share the results. Excellent.
Yeah, so legal, of course, seems to be the winner here, but a lot of interest in the sales scenarios as well, and field service inspections. Great. So just to recap, Nintex Document Generation, it easily lets you create data-driven documents so that you are consistent and error-free in those documents. The documents are dynamic and with the current and most up-to-date information. And you can assemble documents using data regardless of where that data and content lives in different business systems, in different applications, in different cloud services, and what have you. I would encourage everybody to take Nintex Document Generation for a spin. If you are already a Nintex customer, great news. You already have document generation allocated to you as part of your existing license. So go ahead and try out the document generation action in both Nintex Workflow for SharePoint and Nintex Workflow for Office 365. If you are not a Nintex customer, head over to nintex.com for your free 30-day trial of Nintex Workflow for either your SharePoint on-premise environment or Office 365, and document generation will be included as part of that trial.
All right, we've got some good questions here. And this one's actually based on the Office 365 demo I did a little bit earlier. The question is, when using TAP, which was that those document items added into the gallery, the one that integrates with Office 365, does it add a copy into the document, or does it maintain a link to the original that updates the inserted piece? And the answer is it actually is just pulling it in. So basically it's a one-time thing that you can then edit once it pulls it in. It doesn't create links. There's a question about what version of Nintex is being shown in that demo, Manish?
It was Nintex Workflow for SharePoint 2016.
Great.
Yes.
And the question as well, there's kind of a follow-up question. The demo that you showed, is that document generation piece included in the Nintex Workflow Enterprise SKU?
Absolutely. In fact, it is included in both the standard and the enterprise versions.
And can you talk to the DocGen on-prem versus Office 365? There was a question that says there's some confusion about whether it works the same way in Office 365 for those who are using it on-prem.
Great question. Yes, so we actually started by introducing the document generation action in Office 365, and we recently introduced it for the SharePoint Nintex Workflow for SharePoint on-premises solutions. The action that we saw today is the full-fledged action in SharePoint on-prem, and the action in Office 365 has a few of the features missing, but they are coming next month. And so, yes, the actions will be exactly similar and on parity, whether you are using it in a Nintex Workflow for SharePoint on-prem solution or a Nintex Workflow for Office 365 solution.
Great. So if people aren't seeing those, they should update for those who are on-prem?
Yes, people need to have the latest binaries after our December release. And so if you are on Nintex Workflow for SharePoint 2013 or Nintex Workflow for SharePoint 2016, as long as you have the binaries after our December release, and you will see the document generation action in your workflow product.
Another question along those same lines. What about older versions of Nintex or older versions of SharePoint, say SharePoint 2013?
At this time, we are having this released for SharePoint 2013 and 2016. This is not coming to versions prior to 2013, and that's part of the focus that we are driving to make sure that we are delivering the most value for the customers who are on 2013 and later editions, as well as the Office 365 environment.
And can you clear up the question around, it looked like there were some limits in Office 365. Someone had some questions about whether it was actually free, meaning if they, I assume they mean that it comes with the workflow edition with Office 365.
Correct. Depending upon the type of Nintex license, whether you have a perpetual license or a subscription license, there is an initial free allocation of document generation actions that is included with your workflow license. And then once you have used up that initial allocation, there are document generation packs that you can purchase that are on an annual rolling basis.
Okay. This guy's saying, is this draw loop?
This is not actually a great question. So Nintex draw loop document generation is our specific capability and solution for the Salesforce ecosystem. And so for people that are working within Salesforce, draw loop does dynamic document packages within the Salesforce environment. Nintex acquired draw loop about 1.5 years ago, and it is the draw loop API that has enabled us to bring this document generation capability across our SharePoint on-premises and Office 365 environments. So it is the same sort of technology behind it, but those are two distinct products.
Okay, so this is going back to the Office demo that I did. Does TAP, which is that document item gallery thing that includes search in Office 365, does that respect SharePoint security? And the answer is yes. So basically, it is going to give you security trimmed results. When you're searching, it's searching against SharePoint Online. And even if you're doing hybrid as well, it will continue to respect SharePoint security. Does the Nintex DocGen allocation in the license apply to older on-prem workflow products?
So I guess this is similar to the earlier question. As long as you have a workflow license for SharePoint 2013, SharePoint 2016, or Office 365, then yes, the document generation action and that free allocation is available to you. But it is for the 2013 and 2016 on-prem editions and for Office 365.
All right. Another question back on the Office stuff. Someone was asking about quick parts for Excel and creating Excel type templates. There are different features in different in the different flavors, meaning Excel versus PowerPoint. You will see different quick parts, but Excel doesn't have the same kinds of quick parts that Word does. But I would suggest that there are some new dynamic assembly type of features, especially around templates, In fact, in PowerPoint, I would highly recommend you look at the design features where it has these new kind of recommended designs in PowerPoint around, and it's only in 2016, especially the edition that comes with your Office 365 subscription. And I'm going to answer a couple more questions, or ask a couple more questions here. This one says, Joel, what's the stance on Microsoft regarding the deprecation of the document information panel info path within Office 2016? And they go on to say the new properties panel in Office 2016 is nowhere near as powerful as the old deprecated version. A lot of the old features previously are no longer supported. And he's exactly right. The document information panel, which was really big in 2010 and 2013, they've basically deprecated that, trying to remove the info path hooks that are in there. A lot of the work they've done is in those properties. So those document properties, basically the idea would be that you would expose them in the document, and as people are filling out those properties, as the document is uploaded, especially as it's connected to a template, it could then populate those properties. So instead of actually having it in the ribbon itself, you're having those in the document.
Thanks, Joel. Those were some really great questions. It's time to wrap up, and I want to thank everybody for attending this webinar, and hopefully you got some value out of understanding the document generation capabilities in Word and SharePoint, and how Nintex Document Generation can help you deliver data-driven and dynamic documents to achieve your business needs. Goodbye, everybody.